Hey guys, I'm going to be showing you the different ways I do validation in GraphQL. Now there's about 4 different ways I go about doing this, and this is of using a Node.js server, using a PostgreSQL database, and using the SQLize ORM. So that's what I use for the backend, usually for my GraphQL servers, and I'll go about validating the input in 4 different manners. So the first way I'll actually do it is what you see right here. This is a permissions based check, where basically I'm checking something in the JWT token itself. So I'm passing the user in the context, so I know the user, and I'm checking something about the user here. But I can do anything, and this is before it gets to my GraphQL resolver. So here's my resolver right here, and I do requires auth.create resolver. And you'll notice I'm just wrapping my function here with this create resolver with this requires auth. So what will happen is my requires auth function will get run before the resolver for that, whatever, for this guy, for all users. So before all users, that query or mutation is run, whatever, it works for either. What it'll do is it'll go ahead and check this context, and if not, it throws an error. So for requires auth, I'm checking if there's a user. If there's not a user, they haven't logged in, so I'm throwing an error. But you can do any kind of validation you want to here, right? You have the arguments, you have the parent, and you have the context. So any of that works whatsoever. So grab any of that, do any type of validation you want. So this is kind of the first layer of the onion that we're looking at. So I use it. This is how I do it with this create resolver right here. And this code I'll have up on GitHub if you want to look more into how this is done. But this is basically run before the resolver itself, and this code is very easy to share. So that's the pro of doing validation at this level. I can call requires auth.create resolver. I can easily call it up here. I can call it on this guy too. Whatever I want, I can easily share it. And that same statement is checked on each one. So I use that when I want to run, before I do my database query or whatever. So the next thing I do is I actually check. For example, here's an example here with me. This one this shows you how you would do requires auth if an if statement. I'm saying if there's a user, I'm going to go ahead and check it. But I could just do requires auth here. But in my auth function, for example, try login, you can put validation in the resolver itself. So here I'm throwing errors if I don't like the input. So if I didn't get a good user, like if they didn't pass me a good email and password, I'm validating that they give me the right thing, then I can throw an error in the resolver itself. So that's the second way, is actually just throwing errors in the resolver. And then this third way is actually with SQLize. Or the database, whichever one we want to start with. We'll start with the database. So you see how we have unique here. Actually, no, it makes more sense. So the database validation will be run last, so I'll talk about that last. But SQLize, here is the validations that you can run. So these are run on your SQLize queries, or actually I'm pretty sure it's just run on create and update, but you know what I mean. When you're doing operations on your database, this can check and verify you're not changing the data in an incorrect way. So for example, if I want the length of my email to be between something, I can say length, I want it between 7 and 100 characters long. So then what will happen is it'll actually check this, and if it doesn't, it automatically throws an error for me. SQLize will go ahead. And as you can see, there's all types of validation that you can do. So I've been doing more of this type of validation lately because it's very easy, very fast to set up, right? You saw how fast I don't have to do any if statements, anything. All I say is I want the length to be from 2 to 3, whatever length I want it to be, or any of these values, right? Sometimes you only want alphanumeric and other things, or URLs. I can easily slap that on here, and SQLize will check it before it goes into the database. So the last type of validation is actually Postgres. So Postgres can validate things for us in GraphQL and throw errors. just like anything else. So here I'm saying unique. So in Postgres, they're making sure I'm not adding any emails that are duplicates. So you can add constraints and different things in Postgres itself, so it validates your data for you. And if you're not getting the valid data, what will happen is an error is thrown from Postgres, and SQLize will throw that error, and then the error right here in your resolver. So an error will happen in your resolver because you're trying to, for example, create something, and let's say we put bad data in there. Then Postgres will throw an error if we're not adding unique stuff. So those are the 4 different ways I validate data in GraphQL, and you'll do it depending on what you want to validate. You put them in different places. I tend to, if it's something I want to use lots of different places, and it's at the very beginning of the query before I even touch the database I want to do it, I'll usually set up one of these, a permission, and it works well with permissions. That's why I call this permissions, checking that. If I want something that's just one-off, and I don't need to check this anywhere else, maybe I'll put it in the resolver itself. If I can, I'll put it in SQLize if it's just a field. So notice we're only validating a field. When I do length 2 to 3 or 2 to 30, we'll do 100. Why not? That's what I did before, I think, or maybe it was 7. Doesn't matter. But it's only checking the email field, not the password, not the refresh secret, only this field. So that's really nice if I want to target particular fields. And then usually I'll put in Postgres if I can. It's easy, like this unique field. That would be difficult for SQLize or something else to check, so it's the easiest for the database to do. So that's kind of how I choose between where I put my validation logic for different things. In the next video, what I'm going to do is show you how to actually a nice way to handle these errors, because you're going to be getting errors from your database, because I usually use a mix of these, right? I don't just use one. I have errors being thrown here, I have errors possibly being thrown here, and I get errors possibly being thrown by the permissions itself. So they're all over the place. So next video I'll show you how to handle all of these in a nice orderly manner so everything makes sense and you stay sane. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching.